we're not really supposed to start for another 7 minutes, which coincidentally is exactly how long it takes to traverse the Venetian to get to this room. So I did a little video this morning. I'll just let this go in the background. I've, again, just killing time for 6 minutes. Actually rendered this. I used my little camera. And the funny thing is you're not really supposed to have cameras in a casino. So I was trying to be really nonchalant about it. But man, this place is big. It's got to be the biggest hotel in Vegas, if not the country. And yeah, it's several elevators worth. So we spent about 4 or 5 hours yesterday playing with some high-def content we shot for the family show, which I'm going to talk about today. Yeah, this is really distracting, isn't it? We tried to do this Silverlight live streaming gadget madness with zip files and everything. And then we discovered Tim Sneath's blog entry this morning. Had we had it last night, it would have saved Mike a lot of time. If your internet connection was slow last night in the hotel, it was due to us trying to wrangle very large high-def images and streaming content. We're still in the Venetian Tower part. We're not even at the main part. Oh, did you see the star wipe? Oh, I was going to point that out. I'm glad you saw it. Good. Yeah, I like star wipes. Lots of gratuitous star wipes. It's actually a reference to The Simpsons. There's an episode where Homer gets a live broadcast switcher to do his own commercials, and he does star wipes for everything. Okay, here's another. This is sped up double time as well. So I'm getting my exercise here, which is probably good. Work off all those beers. Oh, yeah, and somebody got on. I didn't know what to do. Okay. Oh, you can see my camera. I'll let this video play out, and I'll just get started with the presentation. What other kind of random stuff? You know, it's funny. I did a Tech Ed presentation a couple years ago, and I like to reward the people that show up early. And at the time, I showed what I thought was the coolest Windows app out. There's a program called Keyhole, which became Google Earth. And it was like the first time we all got to see, you know, really the power of what a Windows application can do. And it really took advantage of the power on the Windows desktop, but also, you know, streaming the bits over the internet. And now we have Virtual Earth 3D. We have a little sample that we did where we took WPF code and connected it to. I can't believe we're still walking. Jeez. Is anybody else like way over in the Venetian Tower? Man, 7th floor. We're not even at the elevators yet. Although there was that nice poster. All right, you got 5 minutes. Again, I don't want to start too early because there's people coming out of the other sessions. I should have done it quad speed. So I call the video my bacon suite because I start in the suite and we end up at the reason I got to breakfast on time this morning. 2 escalators, jeez. So what's it going to take to streamlight this puppy? Silverlight. Silverlight streaming. Does it actually do streaming media? Okay. I'm going to try to do it later. We recently purchased a Panasonic high-def camcorder at work. Really nice. They're like $5,000. And it's amazing because it's a complete digital workflow. There's a Sony back there, which is probably recording to tape, but so you have to take the tape off and rip it to a computer. But now they have these RAID PC MCIA cards. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, man. Oh, it didn't put the video in. That's embarrassing. Did you guys see those bouncing things? Ah, all right. I guess I just have to actually do the video. You know, we came up, and this is what we saw this morning. All right, you don't get to see the bacon, but we end on the steamer tray full of bacon. So that's a Windows Media Player, Movie Player thing. All right, so let me actually start the presentation. So I hope this wasn't too offensive, but we realized genealogy is an amazing hobby. It's actually the fastest growing hobby in the U.S., and it's funny considering it's all about dead people. And that's when we came up with the idea to nick the Sixth Sense quote and use it for this. Vertigo has a long history of demo applications that we've built for Microsoft. We have started back in the days with early FM stocks. We're probably best known for the work we did in the iBuySpy portal and in the pet shop world. We did the Windows Marketplace, which is a huge, huge program. It's part of Vista, and just a bunch of other stuff. But the thing that I'm going to talk to you guys about today is the new thing that we've done, and it is Family Show. And this is the genealogy program. This is actually a map. It's not the genealogy program. But I put this in there to provide a bit of context. I thought, I'm always debating how to start these presentations and demos. And I figured, rather than just like go through a bunch of slides, I want to give you some context. Not where we are. It's kind of a metaphor. Work with me. I'm going to give you some context about the application, and I'm just going to run it. Now, it appears that the theme this week at MIX is that everything runs in Firefox. So I'm going to bring up our website. You can download everything here at the Family Show site. In fact, you don't even have to take notes because we have a video of this part of this presentation as well. That's not a great user experience in Firefox. I would expect the Silverlight stuff just to pop up, which we don't have yet. That'll be later. But this is the application, and you can install via click once. Because I'm running on Vista, if you run in Firefox, you have to put this little extension in first, but it should just work now that it's installed. And it pulls down, I think it's about a megabyte. So what's important to see here is this is a full-blown WPF application that will work on Vista and Windows XP. And it's click once. I mean, click once was a big deal 3 or 4 years ago, and we haven't really talked about it in a while. But the important thing is we made this application, and without a lot of extra work, we're able to make it click onceable, if that's a word. I'm going to coin it right now. So as soon as this puppy finishes, and by the way, this is the key. All the source code is right here. There we go. So here's the application, and we have a welcome dialog. The best way to give you a sense of what it does, I'll just start with me. Scott. Neither one of those are true. Although I would look pretty good for 57 years old. Thank you. So it's not much of a family tree with just one person in it. But I want to show you a couple of the controls here. We have support for drag and drop from the desktop. So we can save some pictures. This is me at the Golden Gate Bridge. So we can just do the drag and drop work there. I can add my dad. And then add my mom. Okay. So as we're building it, you see the design is changing. There's really two different worlds with Family Show. There's all the kind of fun WPF, C# programming that we did in the application, and there's a lot of plumbing and glue. But the really hard part was the visualization of a family tree. It's tough. I kind of wish we'd done something simpler because this took a long time. In fact, it really was the majority of the project was just learning about the complexity of genealogy and the intricacies of displaying a family tree. I'm going to show you a couple examples to make it see how it might be a little bit more complicated. I'll set the perspective on my mom, and she's probably going to watch this video, right? So I hope she doesn't get upset that I'm going to kill her. So let's see. So she's now dead. Yes, so little chalk outline. So let's change her relationship with my dad. Let's say they're divorced and they were married from, we'll say I was born in 1950, so I'll at least be legitimate 1960. Okay? So now they're former. And let's say she got remarried to, I don't know, Barry Bonds. I know Tim is in the audience somewhere. So the reason I bring this up is because my mom had a daughter called Carol, whatever. But there's a bit of ambiguity here because we need to know, who are the parents of Mary? Is it Mary, I'm sorry, the parents of the woman I just added, Carol, thank you. Is it Mary and John or Mary and Barry? So right away we get into this complexity. And notice that the colors in red are used to indicate a blood relationship. But if I switch to me and set the focus or perspective on myself, look at Carol. She's my half-sister. So we drew the line at this point. I mean, this thing started to get... This got really crazy, especially when you try to deal with the Windsor family. Those of you that know your royal tree, there's a spot in here that we had to stop because we did not have support for consanguineal marriages. And a first-order consanguineal marriage is when you procreate with a sibling. Second-order consanguineal marriage is when you marry your cousin, which is right there. Tim, please tell me I'm getting this right. He's English, so So we did not have support for graphs. We only supported the tree. So for those comp sci folks out there. So let's see, what else? If you do know a bit about the world of genealogy and you know how to spell it, you're probably familiar with this format called GEDCOM. Now, GEDCOM is a fantastically ugly ASCII format for specifying family tree relationships. And we have one for what might be considered the American royal family, the Kennedy family, and it is this mass of ugly ASCII text. So we have a large chunk of code to deal with importing that, but it does work pretty well. So I can control zoom in and out and see the Kennedy family tree. And the one I want to find here is Maria Shriver. And she's way down here. Anybody know what's special about Maria? She is married to our governor of California, Arnold. Okay. I really thought about sticking in a keyboard shortcut. Tim has given me such a hard time for not knowing how to spell Arnold Schwarzenegger. So here we go. It's very stressful. Chwarzenegger. Yes. That is tough. Now, we also added code to make him a bit shorter than Maria, which is true. If you've seen him, he's not really a tall guy. And I found a fantastic picture of him right here. So we have a, yeah, that's a good shot. So this actually I want to show you too. We generate some fake ipsum dolorum text, and this is our quick attempt to make a little rich text editor. We're going to add some more features to this too, but it supports a lot of the type. This is actually the thing that really got me interested in WPF in the first place, is the typography support. There's some amazing hyphenation and dictionary support that's built into WPF. I think the typography is one of the things that's really overlooked because we have to put in some kind of garish animation everywhere. But I think it's a great set of features. Let me actually go back to the slides and talk about some of the things that we learned from this process. That was our big demo. So I tried to distill everything that we learned about WPF onto one slide. Really, if you were to only remember one slide from the presentation, what would you take away? The real learnings from the team are actually on the website. If you want to see more down here, it's under the detailed notes. This is that's an XPS document. I should probably do this in IE. I don't know if this is going to work. Okay, cool. So I emailed the team and asked them just to put together some of their notes, and we thought this would be a good place to start if you want to go and read some more details, but we were able to distill it down to one slide, which is not here. So you got to read these books. Now, at the time that we wrote this, these were the only two on the market. There's a couple more now that are good, but you need to read them, and then you need to read them again. They are valuable references, but this is a really different space. If you've been building web applications or Windows applications, it's just a different world. The metaphors are very elegant. It is probably, the WPF is probably one of the most elegant, to use the word elegant for software engineers. Okay, it takes on an extra level of meaning. It is really good. It is so much fun doing this programming. We didn't really want the project to end. But after you read those, you realize you don't want to be typing XAML in. You have to use Blend. Now, this slide also, this bullet point was before Microsoft came around to the wise decision to make Blend available to the license, to the MSDN subscribers. So now, whether you're a designer or a programmer, you now have access to Blend. I'm going to show you some demos of that in a minute. You should just write this on the edge of your monitor, because when you're in Blend, if you don't know these keyboard shortcuts, you'll be lost. And I was lucky that these guys figured it out for me. But there's a few key shortcuts like Tab and F4, Control-0. And apparently A and V, I don't really know the difference, but there's ways of selecting two kinds of cursors, which just blows my mind. But I think if you're an Illustrator user, you probably understand that concept. But very good shortcuts to know. I already showed you that click once works, but our entire application is glued together through the WPF data binding world. I'm going to give you a demonstration of that in just a second. But along with data binding, we take all the visual world of styles and resources and templates and group them all together. These are the major concepts that I found just to be the fundamentally difference between WPF and other different kinds of client technologies. And I just think of this stuff as CSS. They're like the styling and skinning, but it's just moved really far beyond what you can do in CSS. Converters are something that I recently discovered because when you want to take some code or some word in XAML and make a slight change to it and stick it on a screen, you can't. You need this thing called a converter. And I put sprintf in here, and one of the people on our team I realized didn't grow up with C. So think of that as string.format. It's the string.format of XAML. So I'm going to write a custom converter in a few minutes. Oh yeah, we still do need actually real designers. I am, by trade, a programmer. I've been to the Tufte courses. I've read all of his books. I know who Ben Fry is. I even know the definition of affordance. But I can't do a gradient to save my life. So you will, and Vertigo is kind of a hybrid company. We have both .NET engineers and designers. So we're able to do some pretty cool things with it. And I'm just glad we had folks like Tony on the project. Yeah, this was one of the last minute tips. I still can't spell genealogy. Until I realized it's like gene analogy, and you get rid of the AN. So that's my little mnemonic. So keep that in mind. Finally, I'm just going to say right now, every WPF application, you're allowed one gratuitous animation. It's kind of like, remember the marquee tag when HTML came out? And everybody had blinking text on their site? This is the modern day equivalent of that. In fact, that's a good time to stop. I'm going to go and show you that. Oh, speaking of Ben Fry, I found this when I was trying to think about how we would take a tour through the code. I just wanted to touch on the major points like the data binding and the converters and things like that. And Ben Fry did this visualization of Atari 2600 assembly language. And unfortunately, the screen's a little bit washed out. It's kind of hard to see, but it's just this really elegant way of kind of snaking through a potentially large and complicated application, which is what I'm going to try to do right now. So I'm going to start, actually, with expression design. And the reason I'm going to start here is because before we ship the project, when we were getting towards the end of the project, I wanted to get our logo in there, the Vertigo logo. And I asked Tony if we could get the Illustrator content and maybe get a JPEG or something. And as soon as I said the word JPEG, I thought, I think that would be bad because we're in a world of vector art now with XAML. And so we thought, why don't we see if we can export the Illustrator content as something that we can manage and manipulate in XAML. So this is my grand tour of this application and also represents my complete understanding of expression design. So I'm going to import some Illustrator content I already have here. These are our 3 official logos. None of them are actually the regular one. We got so confused naming these logos. We didn't know how to, it's like the one that's backwards. Well, they're all backwards. So we named this AO because it looks like an A. This is OV, and this is OA. So just a little tip. So let's delete the ones we don't need. Highlight that. I'm going to group that and call it OGetRev. And I'm sure I paid a lot of money for these colors for our design team. So I'm going to use it. Now, this is not just gray. This is designer gray. Notice the 9399999. Okay, that's real design. All right, so I have my little logo. I'm going to bring that into, now I need to get it into Blend somehow. So I'm going to export this as a XAML file. So here we are. And we choose the document format. Notice this is new, Silverlight, which is cool. But I'm going to export it as a resource dictionary. In fact, if I look at the XAML, there it is. So instead of Illustrator paths, we can take this content right here. In fact, I'll copy that to the clipboard. I didn't actually save the file. Instead, I'm going to bring it into XAML Cruncher, which is an application from Charles Petzold, the man who loves screenshots. Where is he? Petzold. XAML Cruncher. So what I have here is, yeah, this is actually painful. Why is Dodger blue a named color? I'm a Giants fan. This is offensive to me. So what I have here is a really simple XAML page. We have a view box with a rectangle just filled with a color. What I want to do is fill the rectangle with our logo. So to do that, I need to bring in that content as a resource for the page. So I have to add a page resources tag. And then I'll paste in the text that was from the export. And I need to clean it up a little bit. I don't need that resource dictionary. See that? You know what that is? Tablet PC. Yeah, this is so cool. Let's see if I can do this. So I want to highlight that. Oh, that's just going to be bad. Someday I would like to give a presentation on the tablet PC, actually using the tablet controls. This is going to end horribly. There. Okay, good. No compile errors. So go away. So now I have a named object called OGetRev, which is simply a group of geometry drawings. And that's where the vector art is. Those are the commands to go through and draw the individual letters. I can now, instead of filling that rectangle with Dodger blue, I'll just fill it with OGitRev. Now, that doesn't work. So conceptually what we want to do is now fill it with something that's a static resource in my project. So we use the special syntax with the curly braces, and there it is. Now each letter is special. I can go through. They're all treated separately, so I can do something like that. I can also, one of the nice and really the elegant features of XAML is the composability of components by using the ambient content property. So if I take a button, I can type in foo. And so the content for my foo button, oops, why can't I do that? Oh, I have to do it as a rectangle. That's fine. Let me do this instead. I'm going to fill the button with the contents of the rectangle. Now when I hover over, it changes blue, and I get the mouse down effect. So you get the idea. It's important to preserve the fidelity of your designs. You should probably not be putting GIFs and JPEGs into a XAML application, because when they're treated as an object, we can do things like this, because you don't know where that graphical element is going to come in handy. So let me take this drawing brush back out and go into Blend. So I'm going to load up our project here in Blend, which is right here. Now our engineers, pretty much everyone on the project used Visual Studio and Blend at the same time. We did a lot of Alt-Tab integration. Tony, being one of the designers, not one of the coders, pretty much used Visual Studio for the source control. So you'd have to Alt-Tab and check stuff out. But for the engineering side, we were able to use both pretty well and go back and forth. The XAML editor in Visual Studio is a lot better, because here we can't even change the font size. So kind of a bummer. But I do have this little utility that will allow me to zoom in, which is cool. So let's get out of XAML and go back to the design view. Now here's some of those keyboard shortcuts. Remember, Tab gets rid of all the junk. Control-0 centers the page on the item that's selected. A and V does something. And I find that when I don't get the effect I want, I just hit the two keys until I do. So what I want to do is select this little top bar. I want to stick the logo in here. And so I'll use M for the rectangle tool. Just drag a little box in here and bring up the properties for this. And let me set a couple of things. Let's see. Well, see, you can see where I can fill it with the different colors. What I want to do is fill it with that brush. Now, in order to add that chunk of XAML to my application, I have to go into my resources. And here under App Styles, see all these different styles we use, different colors, different stroke widths, etc. I can't right-click and add a new one based on what's on the clipboard. So instead, I have to go to the source itself, App Styles, and then just open up the XAML. And I'll scroll to the bottom, and all I have to do is paste it in. So we're just adding like a constant. It's a named resource in the project, just a collection of drawing objects. So I've saved that. Now when I go back to the main window, I'll select that rectangle. Now I can fill it under Brushes. I can bind it to a local resource called OGitRev, which was down here. Well, we have a lot. There it is. Oh, we left the red in there. That's fine. What else do I need to do? I need to change the layout and make it about 120. That's fine. By 28. And then dock it on the right side, make it right aligned. Control-0, Bob's your uncle. There. So it's now in here. Oh, the stroke thickness. Make that 0. Okay. So now we were able to get this element that came from an Illustrator file through design, exported as XAML, brought into Blend, and now we have to do some gratuitous animation. So I'll select it. See, I didn't quite select, did it? There. See? I pressed A and then selected it. It's just some concept I'm not getting. But here we are. We're in the, there's two modes that you can be in. The design workspace, and I happen to leave it inside the animation workspace, which is what I need now. So I'm going to add an event. When that rectangle raises the event mouse over, basically when we stick the mouse over it, where's mouse? Was it mouse enter? Sorry. When that's raised, I want to create or fire off a new timeline. Call it mouse. I'll just use the defaults there. That's fine. So I'll create an animation that lasts about half a second. So I'll take that time slider and just drag it over to half a second. And we'll change the property, I don't know, transform. I'll flip it around, flip it vertically since it doesn't matter. Okay. So let me save it and F5 it. So notice, look, build started. It's actually fully integrated into the compiler. And now the app's running, and there's our red, and there it is. Not too bad, not too gratuitous. That's the extent of also my animation knowledge. But we're able to get that in. So good, good. So let me close this out. Let's talk a bit about the kind of the glue behind this whole application is really the family file itself. And when you run the application, you have all these, it includes a few files. I'll show you the one that I just created under, let's see, Documents, Family, Show. So I have a bunch here. I have one, it's a representation of the Vertigo family. It's really an org chart, but we thought we'd just bring it up and see what it looks like in XAML. I'm sorry, in XML. So this is the basic format. You know, it's kind of what you'd expect. It's not JEDCOM, but it's a little bit easier for us to work with. In fact, to show you how we do it, I'll show you the data binding and some of the custom converters directly against that file. Rather than kind of finding the specific code in this case, we'll create a blend application from scratch. So we're going to create a new project, number 12. I've tried this, I guess, 11 times. And what I want to do, here's our little window. I'm going to bring in that XML file. So I'm going to link to that XML file as a data source, a named data source. And I'm going to park that array, the person array, which is the collection of the birth dates, the names and photos. I'm going to drag that onto the grid and bind that person to this grid and make it part of its data context. Now what this means is the child elements that live underneath or inside of that grid have access to that. In fact, we'll share the cursor, if you will, or the pointer to the current location. Let me show you. If I bring on a list box right here and bind the contents of that list box to this explicit data context, which is right here, this person array, we choose define data template. I'll want to show the first and last name as a text block. There. Let me make the font bigger. I love this feature, by the way. You just start typing and it shows up. That's going to be everywhere. So I'm setting the font for the whole application. Is that even big enough? Yeah. Okay. So what it did behind the scenes, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but we have a data template which is used by our list box, and that inside of it has a stack panel with two text blocks, one that's bound to the first name and the other that's bound to the last name. Now, I don't like the way it looks right now. It says Scott and then Stanfield. I want the first and last name joined, and then I want a space between them. So to do that, I can just change the orientation of the stack panel to horizontal. And I'll set a margin on the last name. This is kind of nice. Instead of doing like margin of, I don't know, 10 pixels, you can just do 3-point sizes. And the first is left, right, top, bottom. Is that right? Left, right, top, bottom? Let's see. So there it is. So it pulls in the first and last name and scales it pretty nicely. So let's bind something else. We have the image tag. So I'm pulling up from my library of other components. Now, all these pictures were taken from our website, which I'll show you real quick. We have a people page. That's not going to work. Now, normally when you're building a family tree, you might not have all the people available to you right now. By the way, there's a little Easter egg I'll show you. If you click on this funny-looking word, Waktagok, it goes crazy. And that's all JavaScript. There's another one. You hold on Control, or just do it again. Do it again. Whee! And it still works. It's amazing what you can do with JavaScript. Okay, so the same pictures are in this file, so I'm going to bind this guy. This is a picture control. If I set the source property for the picture right here, it's that little tiny box that you need to click on, and bind that also to this data context. And we use this concept everywhere, although what I'm showing you now is really one-way data binding because yeah, that was embarrassing. That's a picture of me as a little cadet when I was being brainwashed when I lived on an Air Force base. So now when we run it, as I move between these pictures, they're linked. And I didn't have to write any code to keep those things in sync. It's just sharing this overall data context. There's both Susan and Anne are in here. And these are the two pictures they used. We actually have we have another pair of twins. We have Mike and Kevin. So there's Kevin. And where's Mike? Well, Mike's in the front row here, but we're not sorted. Sorry, Mike. Oh, there you go. So now I'm doing this because I want to show one more case where this model starts to break down. I'm going to show the birth date. So I'll bring on a text box. And let me set the size bigger. And now I'll bind the text box to a property. Let's see. That's one of these. There we go. Bind that to the birth date. Now we use, when we serialize these projects, collection. That was wrong. Birth date? There we go. That's not a very user-friendly name. That's part of the date-time serialization. So here's the rub. This is where we start to run into problems with building a true WPF application, is that your data might not always reflect the way you want to present it or show it. So the solution is to create something called a converter, or data converter. And now we need to jump into code. So if I right-click on this, we're finally getting to Visual Studio. I'm choosing to edit this project inside Visual Studio. And here's the code. Same thing, same project. But now I need to add a new class. Now we're getting a little bit advanced here for the code, but it's not very long. So we'll call it date converter. And I want this class to inherit from a class called iValueConverter, which I don't have this namespace, so I'll hit Control period and do that, and hit Control period again and do that, and there's my code. So if you have an object that implements this interface, it'll be called when you want to convert it from something to something else. Now, the value coming in is a string, so as long as that's not equal to null, I can do something here. Otherwise, I'll return string.empty. Is that the right way to do it, or double quotes? We've had a debate over this. Double quotes? String.empty. Man, we're like totally split on this. I'll return foo. There. So let's see. I need to return. First, I need to cast that value to a string, and then pass that to system.convert. It's funny, I have to use system.convert because the name of my method is convert, which caused me all kinds of problems. I want to convert, I have my parentheses, convert that to a system.convert. It's just 2, right? What am I missing here? System.convert. What? Oh, it's dot. That's what you're trying to tell me. Oh, here we go. So I'm going to convert that to a date time string value, and then convert that to a short time string, date string. Whew, that's a lot. Okay. Now I'll compile that. Yeah, I know. Believe me, this will cause problems if it'll crash like crazy if you stick the wrong thing in it. So you can only attach it to things that can be converted. This is not best practices. Is that enough disclaimers? Is that good? Okay. So remember this. This is called Untitled Project 12. Now, what we need to do is make our XAML aware of that class or that method. And the way we do that is by adding a namespace. And the convention for attaching to your local code is to use the XML namespace local. And we'll add Untitled Project 11? 12. Okay. And I have to put in front of that CLR namespace. There. A little weird. And then one more line of code here. Local date converter. Bind that to a friendly name of date converter. Now that string is going to point to that code. Little unusual, but let's go back now. Let's see, I've already built it, right? Now when we go back to Blend, we should have access to that date converter. So I'll change the binding here. Come on. Did I have the wrong thing? How do I get back to the data binding guy? Hold on, properties. Go to the data binding, and see this little thing there? It's very important because it expands and allows you to get access to our date converter. There it is. It's a lot of work. So the reason that's important is when we first built the application, remember at the very beginning when I added myself to it, I typed in 1950? Well, you can't convert just the string 1950 to a date time string. So Alan had to write a converter that allows you to convert from, it's the other method that we implemented that allowed you to convert, basically I think you just detected if it's 4 characters, tack on a 1/1, and then convert it to a date time. You know, we found that we use these in a lot of places. And in fact, when It comes up when you want to edit somebody and they're flagged as deceased, what controls you hide and show, because now you can expose whether or not a person is living or deceased, and you can now more readily bind them to the visual elements to hide and show different aspects or change the formatting. So from this, you've seen kind of a very narrow slice of converters and also data binding, two of the features that are used a lot. Now, let me go back to the proper application. I guess I needed that. Okay, so here's our app. Let me bring up that Vertigo, that XML file. This is the one with the pictures in it. So I'll open, there it is, the Vertigo family. It's kind of like a little hierarchy, a little chart. And notice we have the dates, the birth dates attached to them, but they're really the date in which they joined the company. So you can kind of fade in and out, which is kind of a nice effect. But when we were playing with this app, when we built this, we thought, you know, it's nice to get the picture when you hover over it, but what would be really cool is if you could actually just change that person and show the picture itself. And this literally was the day before I flew up to Redmond. I've done this demo one other time and showed it to some partners. In fact, that video is on some of the content you got. It's the WPF bootcamp. We thought, you know, let me show you the source code for drawing these guys. Notice their head is separate from their body. That's because we have two different components there. Al, where's this file? I always forget. Control F, mail node. No. I always forget where that XML is. Where? It's one of these XAML files. There. Okay, this is big. So what we have here, let me collapse these sections. We have the male and female selected or primary node, and then we have the drawing for the male node and female node if they're not selected. So those are the two I want to work with. I have a snippet here. This one line of code, image source equals, there's that I'm binding it to the person avatar, which is the primary picture they have selected. I'm going to take that. And that actually was code that came right out of the hover over state. And so for the female node, if we find the code that draws the head and the body, which is, there's a lot. Here we go, person head and person body. And unfortunately, we need programmatic access to that. So I'm going to kill it just by closing the tag. So the object is still here. It's just not going to render. I need a... There. Control Shift. Oh boy, don't want to do that. I just want to delete. You know, I know how to do it in VI. I don't know how to do it here. Jeez, Shift in. There we go. And do the same for this. Okay, so now I've short-circuited those two objects, and I can paste in my new one, which is the person's picture, and we'll do the same thing for the male node template. And this was something like, really, we just tried it on a lark, and it completely worked and blew us away, and we thought, we're starting to kind of get it. Remember, there's no best practices yet, because there's not a ton of these applications out yet, so we're still kind of figuring this stuff out together. All right, let's compile it. I've got my two image sources in there. Open the Vertigo family, and we should get pictures. Yeah, cool. So, pretty cool. I mean, it makes, oh, whoops. He just joined our company. I don't think at the time we had his picture yet. So without a ton of code, we're able to do some, you know, it's, look, we wouldn't even attempt to do this application in WinForms. There's no way. This would be really tough. And we just didn't worry about it. We didn't worry about this application WPF. We had let our designers just go crazy coming up with concepts for this unique visualization. Now, it was a bit harder than we thought to actually render and figure out these relationships, and that's where a lot of the code is. But doing things like, you know, the save as XPS. Let me show you this code. There's no Vista Common Dialogues there's no native wrappers in .NET for Vista Common Dialogues, so we had to write one. And if we step into this code, you can see we have, here's some pinvoke goodness, and we are making Win32 pinvoke calls to, you know, there's the open file name construct and the common dialogue stuff. It's kind of ugly, But once it's wrapped, it's not that difficult to do. It's just a few lines of code here. So I can step through. How do you step out? I hit the wrong one. There. Okay. Is it? You know what? I have my keyboard mapped wrong. Does F10 go in or out? Step over. Yeah, F10. Okay. So we get down here. We show the dialog. And there you go. You have the correct Vista common dialog. So XPS output. And then when we finish, here's how we print it. So that's just to get the common dialog, to get the name. And then to print it, we create something called a package, and we use the .NET. We use the XPS document and document writer project. We hide the zoom slider panel for the printing, and then we turn it back on, and then we simply write out our project. Close it, turn the slider back on, and then we launch it in a browser. So XPS printing support with just a few lines of code. Now the cool thing about XPS is it retains the vector quality of the project. So I can zoom in, and you can see that the text rendering is still true to form, which is very nice. So there is a lot here, and how do I get back to my deck? I wanted to leave you guys. I want to quit early and have some time for questions. Oh, I do have one more thing to show you guys. See, and it's kind of like my little Steve Jobs homage. Oh, and one more thing. When we came up with the project, the name was originally Family Explorer. And that got nixed by the legal department at Microsoft, because it was probably a little too close to the Windows Explorer. So we thought for a long time about coming up with a new name. So in order to present you our list of choices for the new name, we're using a WPF application, which is this program here. Right there. So these are our top 10 names. Now, we actually ended up with Family Show, and we thought that was kind of funny. It's not a bad name, and it has this nice programmatic aspect to it. Our other choices, number 9, Family, which is kind of, we could probably get the domain name for that. It's also Alan Lee's last name, and his wife's last name is Pham, which is just a total coincidence. I thought that would have been pretty cool. The peeps? No? That was my favorite. Spawn. Familicious. That's a pretty obvious name. Because if we do that, it saves room for the Enterprise Edition. And then when we fix the typo in genealogy, we can release a service pack. Tony's contribution, so that's why I'm balding. But the number 1, Family Jewels. That did not make it. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming. I'm going to stick around for questions afterwards, but it's been a great audience. I'm sorry, I can't hear you over how awesome I am. Long story. This is such a freaking funny picture. I love it. I want to ask the team that built this to come up from Vertigo. These 3 guys, and Tim, if you got some time, come on up. So Tim, tell the audience, why did we pick genealogy again? Because it was really hard.
Yeah, it's really hard without a mic as well.
Do we have a handheld? Oh, right here? Grab that guy? Oh, okay.
When we looked at what we could build. Hello, welcome to Vegas. When we looked at what we could build here, when we were looking to kind of commission what we wanted really to be a reference sample application for people to be able to just see what you could do with WPF. And as a developer, I know that I learn how to use this stuff by taking apart code, seeing how it works, unpacking it, looking at the tough things, looking at the easy things. And so we were really looking for a scenario that was something that was applicable to a real-world business application, but wasn't as dull as something like HR or CRM. So we kind of hovered around a number of things, and I think we spent some time in a kind of brainstorming meeting and sort of looked at things like maybe recipes or just some interesting things like CD collections. But a lot of those things had already been done a few times, and so we were looking for something a bit different. And we liked this scenario just because it was very data-centric. It had a kind of a hierarchical model, which applies to a lot of real-world business situations. And it was hopefully something that was genuinely interesting enough that my mother might be interested in what I do in my day job. So that's always a challenge for me, sort of passing the mother test of explaining what you do for a living. So this was an app that I think sort of just as a scenario caught our eye as a potentially attractive way to kind of model data entities, and hopefully it's something that you can take and use in your own projects to kind of just lift some of that code out to model your own scenarios. So that was kind of the rough kind of structure there behind it. And I think these guys have done a pretty good job. This is a good application to look at if you want to see how to build a WPF application. Do you have the class diagram, Scott, so you can show the structure of the code?
I meant to bring that up. Let me stop this. We just released this last week, and people are actually starting to use it. And the scary thing is, it's not people like us. It's not designers and engineers, programmers on the platform. They're like real people that don't care about programming, that just want to do genealogy, and they think Microsoft's released this free genealogy program, and that scares the heck out of me. In fact, we actually got a bug report filed today. I got to show you this one. Let's see. It was where's that guy's email? Did you guys see it, Mike, Paul? It was hold on, pictures. Well, it's a stack dump in German. And I'm not quite sure what to do with it. No, I didn't save it. Yeah, I was hoping maybe find some Deutsch-speaking folks in here who could help us. So yeah, you're going to spend some time with this. We do have the class diagram here that the guys have annotated, and we're going to put together. We're thinking we could do a white paper. We could also just do a video format, maybe a combination of both to kind of explain how the application works. Like here are the converters I talked about earlier, and the main controls. Once you start to get into it, you realize there's some common things, concepts you take away from traditional client programming, but then there's some things that are just completely different. We do have a person collection we have a person object in a collection called people, makes sense, but then we have this diagramming, and the diagram itself derived from framework element, which is the root node of all the visual controls, and we derive from that to have complete control over the zooming and the scaling, the transformation, and the drawing.
How many family lines did you guys test out? Like how big could you get?
What was the biggest?
I think one of the largest family files we tested was, it was like a Swedish file that had I want to say 1,000 people in it or something. It took a long time to load, and our app, when you load it, a family file that big kind of hangs, and it says not responding, so that's kind of something we got to fix.
Yeah.
Also, but it's pretty robust, I think.
Tony, talk about the scalability of the design. We talk about scalability in software in terms of performance, but there's some visual designs that don't scale to lots of elements, and this is one of them.
Right, absolutely. I mean, and that Scott mentioned earlier that a lot of the project time actually went into really working through how do we want to depict family trees, and scale has a lot to do with it. And we made some choices. For instance, this whole notion of focusing on primary nodes, primary people, and having the whole family tree sort of limit itself to their perspective was one way to do it. We also had to make some trade-offs that weren't as I think that we wouldn't want. Like, for instance, in my family tree, we don't show siblings and siblings' families. So I can show my brother, but I can't see my brother's kids. I can't see my niece and nephew on my family tree. That's a little bit of a drag.
There is a tree metaphor that we're used to today, and that's the Explorer. And the Explorer allows you to, you can expand and collapse nodes without committing yourself to it. So I can go all the way down and expand this stuff. But until I select it, it's not showing it to me over here. And we played around with that idea to solve the problem that Tony mentioned, because maybe his brother's kids are important to him. They should be. There's niece and nephew. But we don't currently display it because we found it just opened up a whole rat's nest of UI scale problems. I mean, it starts to get really crazy, especially when you bring in such a very large family tree.
Yeah, so, had we the opportunity to take this thing further, I think along the lines of the time slider, we could filter the data in other ways so that you can, either you expand stuff and, collapse it, or you can set preferences for the views, and you can look at, say, everybody in your family that made it to 100 years old, or, just show me all the women in my family, or sets of twins in my family, and those kinds of things.
It's nice. It does have some kind of bearing on business applications. but everybody has a family, so this is a little more grokkable. We did originally have an idea of integrating with Virtual Earth 3D, and you could somehow show how your family over the generations migrated from wherever they came to wherever you are now, but that quickly dropped off the map. No pun intended.
Hey, Scott, is the tree itself an object? The person's an object? The tree itself?
It's a visual object that derives from framework element, and that's the diagram object. But it's not useful. It renders the person collection. It would be feasible to have a different version of that. We've thought about have an abstract class and derive from that and have different presentation visualizations, but we ran out of time.
Okay, because you could add 3D to that quite easily.
We thought about that. How would 3D work in a family tree? I wanted to do that, but
You turn the whole tree, and then you double-click on a family member, and that would either collapse it.
oh, they could go out to the side. Oh, that's like Mario Paperboy.
You could add that quite easily.
That's like, isn't that like Mario Paperboy? on the Wii? Super Mario Paperboy. Yeah, it's a 2D game, but you can flip it to 3D and get like a different view and flip it back. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm a designer now.
Yeah.
Just that easy.
Well, we call this like a 2.5D because we have 2 dimensions, X and Y, but a half dimension of time. I mean, if you can bring all 4 dimensions in, I actually think time is the true dimension that we could bring into business applications that would give us an interesting visualization of how systems evolve over time. Because what we do really well with great visualization are make inferences or connections about cause and effect and why things happen. And in the context of a business application, if you show somebody different data and pivots on it, but don't let the software make assumption as to what's going on. Let the person do that. And by throwing in the time dimension, we might see connections over time. That's where we're going to go with it.
4 questions in one. How many designers, how many developers, how long, and if you could redo this architecture, what would you change?
Good questions. I know it's about 2,500 hours. There's a lot. Yeah, so the question is, so how many designers worked on the project? Tony, he had another designer that did some early visualizations. And then Alan is a former, he's moved over from our engineering world to our design world. He's kind of a liaison. He's our creative engineer. So Alan plus another engineer, Ralph, who's in Texas, and Paul ran the project. So about an average of three people full-time, 3.5, but about 2,500 hours of total effort. I don't even want to do the math on how much this cost. We got all the way through it, and we had a working version, and then I killed it. We literally had a working version that did almost everything, and when we sat down to really play with it and think about how it's going to demo, we just didn't like it. We didn't like the visualization path that we went down. So we scrapped it and pretty much started over. So we did get a second chance, another chance at improving and refactoring the architecture. But Alan, Paul, what would you guys do differently? We'd probably do it in Silverlight.
So when you refactored and you changed it, what was the mistake the first time?
Yeah, I know.
Well, it actually wasn't. It was as much a design decision as an architecture decision. We, as we were exploring ways to visualize the tree, and that, from a design perspective, that's why we really wanted to choose genealogy as our subject matter, because we really, enjoy taking data and turning it into information and then visualizing that information. But we, in trying to scope down the family tree to make it more digestible, we scoped it down too far. So what we did was we tried to focus the display on an individual, a primary, their family of origin, their parents and their siblings, and if they were an adult, their current family, a spouse and their own children. And we, it animated sort of old rotary phone style as you change primary nodes and stuff. So it was neat, but you didn't get the full context of the larger tree. And the transitions were really uncomfortable. You didn't know what was going on as you moved from person to person.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's the thing that still today we're not so sure about. When you change the selected node, it changes the entire diagram, so it's now done in the perspective of that person. So other people go away based on business rules that we've decided, we just had to decide on. It's not a pedigree chart. A pedigree chart is strictly your genealogical, your blood, it's mother, father pairs all the way up. That's a pedigree. This is kind of a hybrid of that plus an expansion of stepchildren and things like that.
Yeah, and then from one version to the next, something else we changed was, we changed several things. In the first version, we were really hard-coding pretty much all the different colors and styles and things like that. In the second version, we pulled them out into resources that you saw, Scott, that huge list of resources. And that was really big. That allowed us to change it easily and even reuse them when we added new features to the app, which was really cool. And then at first, we were using binary serialization because when we were storing the family and you're storing relationship data, you kind of get these weird circular references that XML serialization can't handle. And so when we went to the second version, we actually kind of fixed it so we can handle that with XML serialization. And I think that was beneficial because you can kind of, open the XML file and read it and do things with it like Scott was doing. So there's just a couple things that we changed.
I'd love you guys to talk a little bit about the technical challenges you faced, the big kind of mind-bending moments that you had to overcome in terms of understanding WPF.
Yes. So WPF was like the jump from ASP to ASP 1.1. It was a big jump to learn, get up to speed and learn and build a sample reference app. So I read Petzo's book. I read all of Adam Nathan's book, twice actually, and I used the knowledge I learned from that to build this application. And the other challenge for us was the designer-developer workflow and the roles, who does what. And so traditionally, some of the developers do the whole stack, but now the roles kind of changed. The process is more iterative as well. So design can have one way, but things can change, and we can go back to it and change it. And developers have to be keen on building the controls and such so that designers can go back and modify just the XAML and use tools like Blend and to do it instead of doing code. Building the controls and such programmatically or procedurally, just build it as XAML so that as creative developers and designers, we can just modify with Blend. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would just add to that when we first started using this stuff, we weren't using Blend. I don't think Blend was really out yet. There was some Sparkle stuff that was out. But so we kind of were doing all the XAML by hand, in Notepad and things. And so then we start using Blend when that comes out, and that's a pretty good learning curve as well. I mean, you can kind of do some simple things quickly, but to really know it and to really get into it, that's a big learning curve. When we started using that, though, we just, our productivity just shot through the roof. We were able to do so much more instead of hand-coding the XAML by hand. It was nice to start the way we did, I thought, hand-coding the XAML by hand because we could kind of understand what Blend was doing. But Blend was just such a big help, so it was definitely worth learning.
Data binding just blew my mind. So when I learned about it, just the two-way data binding and the property change notification and observable collection, what the power that we can do with that instead of modifying elements, they get updated behind the scenes in the objects, and other objects that bind to that also get updated. So in our scenario, on the right-hand pane, we have the full name on top. If you modify the first name or last name, that full name will be changed whenever you modify either the first name or the last name. It was really cool. I didn't find that as challenging as just the process, the workflow, getting up to speed on learning Blend.
Oh yeah, Simpsons. Yeah, we didn't ship this one because we've got all these pictures in here. Probably wouldn't be cool. But the Simpsons family tree is enormous. Oh, look at this. I'm running the version that requires the pictures. So I have a bug. Oops. Now I'll pull it up in another version. Keep going. Oh, I want to show. I brought this back up because as these guys, Paul and Alan, were playing with the technology, they built some side projects. This is Alan's WPF Twitter application, which was twittered by MIX07 during the keynote, and I happened to be running it when I saw the message come across. So this is kind of cool. I guess I'm logged in right now. So.
It was just a tech exploration,
Jeff.
so I did it in a day. So no UI polish. I apologize.
A lot of glass.
Yeah, a lot of glass.
There we go. Cool. Yeah, so that was good. This is my favorite. Same game. Or it's actually Samegami, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either one.
This is that little program you have on Windows Mobile.
My wife loves that.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah. Same with Paul. I think the inspiration was from his wife playing this on TiVo. Exactly. We have audio, but I don't think I have the version with the audio installed. And the idea is let me restart. The more you get of the same color, the bigger your score is. There's some algorithm it goes up exponentially. Yeah, it's just fun. You guys keep talking. I'll just keep playing. I mean it.
We'll just watch you play for a while.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how many of you here have actually started tracking your family history and played around with some applications like that? So there's a few of you. They're not very good, the other programs out there. I mean, they're good in terms of the data, but the visualization, the UI is kind of tricky. Yeah, Chris?
The problem is we run into that there's a generation gap where we have old people that want to do their family history, but the tools suck. And how do you track younger generations?
Yeah, exactly. I think we are, based on just the downloads, there are a lot of people playing with it right now. What becomes really interesting with this is when you start to connect it with other people's family trees or other people in your family, so they can go and work on parts of theirs, and then you connect them up. And there's all kinds of algorithms out there to help you merge family trees, but it starts to get pretty tricky. There's no GUIDs that we can just line up. It starts to get kind of ugly.
Which is a question for you guys in terms of how we develop this a little bit further. We've got a little bit more budget left over to kind of put into this app, and really our goal is to turn this into something that people can really get value out of for your own application development scenarios. So I've got kind of three choices for a quick hand show vote here. I'm not guaranteeing that this is binding and authoritative, but option number one is we add some more features to it. We could do things like extending out the rich text box, maybe tidying up a few little bits of code, maybe adding a different visualization. Option two is we build like a deep technical white paper on the construction of the app. Option three is we add a Silverlight kind of read-only mode that you could upload to Silverlight streaming so that you could share it with grandmother that doesn't have WPF but is able to install Silverlight on her machine. So given those three choices, I'm just intrigued to know from this maybe representative, maybe non-representative sample, how many people would go for the features work? Nobody wants. Oh yeah, there we go. A couple of people want features. How many people would go for the technical white paper? Okay, good number. And how many would go for the Silverlight piece?
Do them all.
And 3D.
3D, yes, there we go.
Yes.
Okay. We'd love, I think, it'd be good to get some feedback. I think we're trying to think about the way to kind of make this last in terms of longevity. We've obviously released the source code. The Vertigo guys have put it up on their website. Open sourcing it for community modification and putting it back up into the thing is a possibility. There's a number of ways we could use it. So feel free to email Scott or myself if.
You can also give us feedback when you do the speaker evaluation, which you will do, right? Do the speaker evaluation. There's a spot for feedback. You can give us some ideas through that, or send mail to familyshow@vertigo.com. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.